Every casino on Earth is built on one tiny number. In American roulette, it's 5.26%. That's the house edge, the invisible tilt that guarantees the casino wins over time, no matter who's playing. Now here's the part that'll ruin your day: your 401k runs on the exact same math. They just gave it a friendlier name. Let me explain what I mean, because once you see this, you can't unsee it. A casino doesn't need to beat you on any single spin. It doesn't care if you win a few hands of blackjack or hit a jackpot. All it needs is a small, permanent tilt in its favor, applied to a massive number of bets over a long period of time. That's the entire business model. Vegas built pyramids of glass and gold on a number smaller than a rounding error, because they understood something most people never do: a tiny edge, repeated relentlessly, becomes an ocean. The financial industry understands this too. They just don't call it the house edge. They call it the expense ratio. And it lives inside almost every investment product you own. Here's how it works under the hood. When you buy a mutual fund or an ETF, the company managing it takes a percentage of your total money every single year, not your profits, your total balance. A typical actively managed fund charges around 0.7%. Some legacy 401k funds still charge over 1%. Doesn't sound like much, right? Less than a penny on the dollar. That's exactly what the casino wants you to think when it points at that 5.26%. Because the trick isn't the size of the number. The trick is what happens when you multiply it by time and by a very large balance. Let's run the actual mechanics. Say two people each invest and grow their money to a $500,000 balance over their careers. Person A holds a fund charging 0.7%. Person B holds a fund charging 0.03%. That's a real number. That's roughly what the cheapest total market index funds charge today. On that $500,000 balance, Person A is handing over $3,500 a year. Person B is handing over $150. Same market. Same stocks inside. Nearly identical returns before fees. The only difference is the tilt. And just like in a casino, the tilt isn't a one-time cost. It's applied every year, to a growing pile, and the money you lose to it is money that can never compound for you again. Over a 30-year working life, that fee gap doesn't cost you a few $1,000s. Depending on your balance and returns, it can quietly siphon off well into six figures, money that was mathematically yours, that ended up on the other side of the table. Now here's the second layer, and this is where it gets genuinely clever. Why does the industry always talk in percentages? Because percentages hide dollars. If your fund company sent you a bill every quarter that said, "Please pay us $875 for holding your money," you would feel that. You'd shop around. You'd get angry. Instead, the fee is skimmed silently off the top of your balance before you ever see a statement. You never write a check. You never feel the withdrawal. The casino doesn't ask you to hand over chips, it just adjusts the odds and lets math do the collecting. There is $7.4 trillion sitting in American 401k plans, and a meaningful slice of it flows out through fees that almost nobody ever consciously agrees to pay. This is the same psychological trick as the house edge. A gambler feels the wins and the losses on individual bets, but the 5.26% is invisible. It only shows up in the aggregate, over thousands of spins, as the slow erosion of the bankroll. Your expense ratio is invisible in exactly the same way. It never appears as a moment. It only appears as an absence, the wealth that should have been there and quietly isn't. But here's where the casino comparison breaks, and where this stops being a doom story and becomes a genuinely useful one. In a casino, you can't own the house. The edge is permanently against you and there is no button you can press to flip it. In investing, you can. You can literally move to the other side of the table. When you buy a low-cost index fund, and again, the cheapest ones charge around 0.03% to 0.05%, you shrink the house edge against you to almost nothing. And then the most powerful force in finance, compounding, starts working almost entirely for you instead of for the fund manager. The same relentless multiplication that made Vegas rich now points at your account. A tiny edge, repeated over decades, becomes an ocean, except now it's your ocean. Historically, broad U.S. index funds have returned somewhere in the neighborhood of 7% a year after inflation over the long run. Keep more of that by cutting your fee from 0.7% to 0.05%, and you've essentially handed yourself a permanent raise on every dollar you invest, for the rest of your life, without earning a single extra cent at your job. So let's talk about the one lever you actually control. You cannot control the market. You cannot control interest rates, or recessions, or what any stock does tomorrow. Those are the spins of the wheel. But the house edge, the fee, is the one variable that's almost entirely in your hands. It's knowable, it's printed in every fund's documents, and it's changeable with a few clicks. So here's what to actually do with this. Go find the expense ratio on your biggest investment. It's in the fund's fact sheet, it's in your 401k portal, it's one search away. If it starts with a 0.7, or heaven forbid a 1 point anything, you are playing at a table with a serious tilt against you. Look inside your plan for a broad index option, usually something with total market or S&P 500 in the name, and check its number. If the cheaper fund holds essentially the same companies, you have found free money, and it's the rarest kind, money that costs you nothing to claim. And understand what you're really doing when you make that switch. You're not chasing a hot tip or timing anything. You're doing the one thing the casino can never let its customers do. You're quietly walking around the table, sitting down on the other side, and letting the edge work for you instead of against you. Because that's the truth hiding under all of this. Wealth, at the level most people can actually reach, isn't built by picking winners. It's built by refusing to bleed. It's built by understanding that a small tilt, applied to a large number over a long time, decides almost everything, and then making absolutely sure that tilt is pointed your way. The casino spent a century perfecting a machine that turns a tiny edge into a fortune. The good news is the machine works in both directions. You just have to know which seat you're sitting in. If this changed how you look at the accounts you already own, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this find other people who've never had it explained this way. Subscribe, because next time we're pulling apart something you tap or swipe almost every single day, and there's a hidden negotiation happening in the 2 seconds you never think about. Go check your expense ratio. I'll see you in the next one.